Hello everyone, welcome back to Purrfect.dev. Today we have Knut Melvaer from Sanity.io. He is head of the developer relations over there. There we go. There's everyone.
In the show? Yeah, I'm in the show.
Hey. It's interesting with three people. I've only done it with more than three. So, Knut, do you have anything you want to say to get rolling here?
Yeah, sure. Well, Happy New Year, I guess.
Yeah, Happy New Year as well. I also have my guest host with me, Nick Arush.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy New Year. I'm excited about this. Let's get to it.
I'm pretty pumped. So in just a little backstory, in 2019, I started Agent P and had a back end that was a mess. I threw it all over the place, had some markdown files, all that fun stuff. And then in my rewrite to Gatsby, I stumbled upon this crazy thing called Sanity.io. And that is where I was able to meet Knut, because he is all over their Slack channels. He basically helps me once a day, still to this day. It's kind of nuts. So I'm going to dive into our questions and get rolling here. So first question, what is a headless CMS?
Yeah, and I guess I'm the one to answer, I guess. Since yeah, that's kind of like the big question, isn't it? So yeah, a headless CMS, it's kind of a problematic category for us who makes CMSs, because it's defined by what it is not, in a way. So headless means that it is a content management system that doesn't come with like a way to render the content on a web page. So CMSs used to come with like a template language built in, like WordPress used PHP, or Jekyll used like what does handlebars or something? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and so-called headless CMS doesn't come with that. It only comes with an API or a way to edit markdown files or whatever. So it's kind of defined like what it doesn't have. Why you would want a headless CMS is because exactly that, because you have some other way to render some content, either in like a fancy JavaScript framework like Gatsby or Gridsome or what have you, or in something completely different like a voice assistant or a toaster, what have you. Yeah.
Right. So how does like Sanity.io fit into that picture? Like, why did Sanity.io come to be? Like, where was that grand vision?
Yeah, so Sanity was built by its sort of predecessor, which was a digital agency called Bangler, and they got this like world-renowned architecture firm. Like they asked them to build a new website, and their old website was on WordPress. And when like the guys at Bangler like looked into this, they kind of found this mess of content where projects info and all the buildings and all this stuff was like chaotically structured in HTML and sort of impossible to unwrangle and build into something new. So they kind of wanted a platform or a CMS that would let them structure this content and render it in interesting ways. And at the time, there wasn't really a solution that could provide what they needed. So they had to make it themselves. So that's where Sanity came up. And it was kind of neat, successful. And a couple of years after, they thought, hey, why not just build a product out of this?
Sure. Yeah.
And rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if I remember right, a big part of the vision behind like Sanity is portable text, and that was something new to me, and it's still something I struggle with a little bit. I understand that, you know, you want to be able to, I think you even mentioned a toaster, like you want to be able to send down like this content onto your front of your fridge or a toaster or whatever. How does that work? Like, I think a lot of people are used to Markdown, but what does portable text actually look like? What does it do?
Yeah, so everything in Sanity is structured like as JSON documents, which makes it really easy to work with in especially web technologies, I guess, and JavaScript in the JavaScript world and so on. And portable text is a specification. It's like open source, and you can check it out for dealing with rich text in like a JSON structure. And we have, like, for many years embedded rich text in this format called HTML, and it has been great.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that one.
But it's great only mostly for the web, and of course, web is a big part of what we do. But it's not so great when it comes to native apps or toaster programming code or whatever. And it's not that great in like these JavaScript frameworks, because like it's not fun using dangerously insert in inner HTML in React and sort of lose control over what happens inside of it, right? So portable text lets you like serialize different parts of rich text and give you control over how that is rendered, even in like a web framework. So that's kind of useful. It's a bit of a learning curve because it's not that common, like of an approach. But once you get into it, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, for sure. It took me a minute to do some of the, like, I don't know if you call it deserialization or what it's called, but basically like taking in all that nice portable JSON-y text, and it becomes a lot, like where Markdown has, basically your paragraphs are just text, and then you have your header with a pound or 2 pounds or whatever. HTML similar, right? Because you have markup, it actually tells you what's happening in there. The portable text, which for many of you on the podcast, it's probably hard to actually visualize this, but if you looked at JSON, it actually breaks down every single line. So like, if you have a paragraph, but it has a bold parameter in it, it actually has to list out that certain piece of text is bold. And when you take that whole massive, like, raw portable text back in, you have to kind of, what's the right word? Deserialize that text, and then put it back into, most of the time, what we're dealing with, an HTML form. So it's a lot of like this back and forth, but it's definitely, I think if we look out 3 years from now, it's like, why weren't we doing that more often? That's kind of where my head's at. But
yeah, so I'm like, I've been using Markdown forever, or not forever, because it hasn't been forever, but it's designed to be easy to write and easy to read. That's why John Gruber designed it, because he didn't want to like handwrite HTML, which makes sense, right? But it's not that great for like programmatically parse. It's kind of a pain to parse HTML and Markdown in your programs, and of course it has been a thing for many years. So there's a lot of tooling and stuff like that around these things, but it's better to have something with like portable text if you want some sustainability and stuff like that for your content. And what portable text also allows is to do some powerful things, because you can embed data structures within your rich text. So you can sort of make a footnote that is like sustainable and will not break or not require any like special short code magic or something like that. It's pretty logical in a way. And if you use it with Sanity, you can also embed references into these data structures. So you can have actual indexed references inside of your rich text. So documents can know of each other even when we have these references within a annotation upon a span and so on. So it's pretty powerful. But as you say, it's a bit of a thing to learn. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely powerful though. I think once you're kind of in the flow and you already have like, for instance, on our site, we use Gatsby right now, and for that, I think one of the big parts in there, once you have that kind of deserialization set up and it's all modeled out, you kind of stop thinking about portable text. So like tomorrow, if I want to spit out only markdown files, I just set up another deserializer, and here's the markdown, or here's a React component, or whatever you want to make out of it. That's kind of the power that I see with it. There's also this crazy language called GROQ. I mean, what is that all about? How do I use it? So yeah, that's a leading question. I've used it a few times, but how do you explain it? Like, what is GROQ to people with portable text?
Yeah, so GROQ, or what's the abbreviation? So Graph Relational Object Queries, I think it's short for.
I think that's probably right.
So when like Bangler or the Sanity predecessors made Sanity, they needed some way to query the content, right? And this was around the time GraphQL was open sourced. And they looked at this, but they needed a way to like just query arbitrary JSON documents without having to define a schema or resolvers and so on. So GROQ is a full-fledged open source specification for a query language for JSON documents, basically. So it's kind of like SQL for JSON, whereas GraphQL is more like RESTful or something. It's more like a API pattern, a way to design an API. So it's not directly comparable, but you kind of use it for the same things. But yeah,
it seems amazingly powerful. Does it work? The one big thing, like I keep considering, is I use Firebase all the time too. Does it work similarly to that? Do you know, or is it? It's very bizarre, like seeing kind of like that SQL-ish syntax, but then thinking about JSON on the other side of it and how that all pins together.
Yeah, so I'm actually not that familiar with Firebase. I played a bit with it, but not too much, especially not since I started at Sanity. I should probably do it. But as I understand Firebase, you kind of get this like object that you can put data into and query. There's a SDK or something, right? There's
Firebase and Firestore, and they're both like document based. Firestore has more of like collections within it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you can take and query those, just as you said, like through an SDK. They have a ton of them. But the interesting part to me is, if all these things are just JSON payloads, I would think like GROQ should be able to tie out to that too. Maybe it's just one of those, hey, here's a project that could call out to. I don't know how that looks, and a lot of people complain on the Firebase side that it's kind of a closed off system, even though a ton of it's out there. It's still owned by Google. I believe GROQ and portable text and everything are open license standards.
Yeah, so we try to open source everything that we can and makes like is responsible in terms of us also wanting it to be a business, right? But the open sourced GROQ last summer, and that involves like publishing the full specification, and we also published the JavaScript implementation of it, so you can run GROQ locally on any like JSON documents collection that you have. So it will only load it into memory and that you like query it there, or you can go to groq.dev and try it in the browser. And we also made like a parser compiler that you technically, if you want to have it in another programming language, you can technically do that. I don't know how easy it would be, but we want one in Golang, right? Because that's what we use on the back end. But yeah, for sure. If Google decided that they wanted to use GROQ for Firebase, they could totally do that.
That's interesting.
It would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you guys are GCP or Google Cloud Platform on the back end of Sanity. This is something that I've been like crazy thinking about for a while now. Is it purely like the database, the backend, like it's 100% custom? Are you running it serverless? Are you running it on a VM? Can you answer any of this? Like it blows my mind. Like, what's that look like?
Yeah. So what we give you, because let's backtrack a bit. So Sanity, we call it a platform for structured content because it's not like only like the log into the CMS interface and get an API. So you get like this open source Sanity Studio, which is kind of like the CMS. And that's just a React single page application. And we give you all the code and stuff like that. This connects to our hosted real-time data store, which you refer to now, which you don't have the source code for because we are hosting it and running it and keeping it up to date, because this is like a real-time data store. So it kind of like Firebase or Firestore in a way. We also have CDNs, like we cache the queries that you have or the assets that you have, because you also get like an asset backend with on-demand transformations and stuff. So we have all this piping and wiring that we are building, and that's custom. It's built with like boring database technologies, but in like a special way that makes it possible.
Yeah, I mean, every time I go to look at it, I'm like, oh, this is so much like Firestore, but yet like very content based, and it's doing a couple extra things in here. And so I was trying to figure out if you guys ended up like plugging a backend, and we were talking about JSON, like Firestore is the backend piece, because I've seen like FlameLink is like a CMS built on top of Firebase, and I'm like, did they just plug it all together really nicely and make it work? That's why it seems so
Firebase,
similar.
it's not Firestore. it's much more boring. It's mature database technologies that we have like combined in a way that works. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm gonna pop up for those on the YouTube side of this, just show kind of what we talk about here. A minute, maybe. There we go. So when Knut's talking about like Sanity Studio, the crazy part is like this is AJAMP's backend. Okay. So when Knut's talking through it, and for those on the podcast, I'm basically showing a web screen, and it has things like blog posts for our blog, and then we break down kind of our courses at a high level, and then course modules. But when we're talking about portable text and different things, like these look kind of crazy different once they're out on the actual main website. Like we have this image served up by the Sanity backend, but it's actually calling out, if you were ever to look at the inspect side of this, let me drag that over real quick. It actually is spitting out like image sets and all this kind of cool image manipulation, or not manipulation, but different source sets on the fly dynamically. And so that's, in addition to all the text-based items, there's a ton of image type stuff. One of these days, I'm going to get around to doing an actual tutorial. All of my anchor links here, which don't work currently, but the background color of those are actually icon background colors. So if I were to go into like the Angular CLI in frameworks, it's actually pulling the color out of this using some of the crazy technology in what Sanity offers to build some of that out. So, and when we show off like studio like this, my studio could look 100% different than anyone else's studio. Well, maybe not 100% different, but they could plug and play a lot. Like one big thing for me, I think out of the box, this was the Gatsby build out to Netlify, and I was able to put in Google Cloud build into it because I run everything off of GCP on the back end. So it's cool. Just an amazing product that we get to utilize for sure. Everything is built on React. So you can customize, like I said, mine might look totally different than anyone else's because you can put any little React plugin in this thing that you'd like, and it all ties out. So just that in a nutshell kind of leads me into my next question. Let me remove this again here. Hey, that's a much better layout, guys. Maybe I should have been using that for a while now.
A lot better.
Yeah. So my next big question here is with showing that, how would you say that's different from like Contentful? I always feel like they've got me into their product and like you're only going to use it this way. And can you explain like some of the differences there? Not to like put down Contentful. I don't like putting down anybody's product or anything, but what's the difference that you see in JAMStack?
We kind of had the like the BBC situation there for a minute. Do you know the clip I referred to?
Yeah. It's kind of scary sometimes.
I didn't try to derail the at all. No,
no, you're good. You're good. Welcome to live streaming, right?
Well, I can at least say that how Sanity perhaps differs from like Contentful and similar headless CMSs, because what they tend to do is to give you like the web interface, like the web admin area, and then you go into it and then you drag and drop your content models. And as you say, there are some like constraints and restriction for how to do stuff, right? And you don't get like, you're not like in a first class citizen when it comes to access to the APIs. So because we give you the admin or the content environment source code, we also sort of have to give you all the access to the APIs, because this studio has to connect to all of these things like the history API or users or whatever, right? So that's the main difference, and being able to, as you say, and have done, like customize how you want that content editing environment to be. That's like the highest differentiator, I think. You can have that with other CMSs as well. You can probably do wild stuff with WordPress, right? But they usually comes with the cost of you having to manage the backend yourself. And sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes you would enjoy managing a MySQL database, right? But sometimes you would.
I mean, not me, but someone might.
And the other differentiator, I think, is I think we're still the only like content management platform that's real time. So everything you do in the studio or whatever is like real time, like Google Docs, and that's not something you think about a lot, especially if you are like the sole person on the project. But not having to worry about document locking or race conditions and stuff like that is also pretty useful, especially when you are connecting bots or scripts or stuff that wants to do stuff with your content while you are editing or whatever. Yeah.
Cool. So I think we probably touched a little bit on my last and final question, but I know you haven't dealt with Firebase at all. Have you done anything with like DynamoDB in AWS or any of those? Okay.
I know of them. Haven't done a lot of stuff with them. Yeah.
Yeah, my question, and we can just talk about it offhand, was kind of like, what is the difference between like a Firebase and a Dynamo and things like that? And I guess from my standpoint, what I've experienced between my day job and kind of my side projects is Sanity actually, it's 100% focused on content, right? So they want all of your like textual content, your images. You guys aren't doing movies or like video yet, correct?
That's correct. We have partnered with someone that does it better, like Mux.
Yep. But basically, I guess where I was heading with all that, in order to do at least the image and like database part of those things, you have to dive into like separate products. So not separate like infrastructure products, but when we're looking at like DynamoDB, you've got to tie in like AppSync to have GraphQL to DynamoDB in the back end that points at a storage bucket to store your images, and you have to like create all of that infrastructure. Same on Firebase. It's Firebase. They don't have a GraphQL endpoint like Sanity does, but REST API essentially, SDK on that, and then you have to end up going with what's the word I'm looking for? Storage container, I think, is the right thing on GCP. I keep getting too many clouds in my brain, too many product items. But you have to kind of create all that, where Sanity's just like, hey, here's this thing, here's a React component, drop this in and it works. Or you can add some of the nice plugin features and it takes care of it for you. Is that fair to say? Probably a decent comparison, not knowing Firebase or AWS though.
Yes, so we have customers that doesn't use the studio at all and just use like the backend. For example, we have a large-ish cable TV provider in Norway, and they use Sanity they have a lot of different data sources and databases for movie and TV series content and stuff like that, and they synced all of that into Sanity to get like a unified API to query this against their applications and stuff. Cool. So in many cases, I would guess it can replace something like Firebase or Dynamo. But as you say, those are more low level in a way. They give you more affordances in terms of access control, perhaps, or like more database stuff. But we are continuing working and building features that takes this closer to what those are. But as you say, we are kind of focused on content because that makes sense, because there's so many things to solve in that area.
Very cool. Yeah. So do you have anything else you'd love to add as we wrap up here, Knut?
To like complete this pitch session on Sanity? Well,
I love Sanity, so keep pitching away in my book.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we could have talked about. You touched on like
that sounds like a podcast part 2 to me.
Yeah,
it sounds like if we can have you on again, that's great.
Of course, anytime. But yeah, you mentioned like the icon colors and stuff like that. Perhaps elaborate a bit on that. So what happens when you upload an image to Sanity is that we take that image and we analyze it and write that data into something called an asset document. So you will get like the color palettes, the dimensions, and we make like a low quality image placeholder that we also put into this document. And there are other services that does kind of the same things. But what's neat about this is now your assets are queryable. And this is where structured content comes in, right? So you can say that if you allow us to take the EXIF data of your photos, you can actually, using GROQ, query for all the images that you have where a flash has been used when you took it, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And you can also say, give me all the posts that uses an image where the flash has went off when I took the picture. So you can do stuff like that, which is pretty wild when you think about it. But that's like the neat thing with structured content, I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably seeing a lot of different like content agencies starting to pick up on Sanity.io because of that. Is it Condé Nast? Didn't you have a blog on that recently where they have tons of asset management going on?
Yes, so Condé Nast in Britain has a magazine called Love Magazine, and it's this like very photo heavy kind of publication. I think they have like 30,000 photographies or something on their site, and our asset picker has been pretty minimal for a while, and the developer at Love Magazine asked us to like improve it, and we thought about it and came to the conclusion that what if we just made it possible for you to like make it easy for you to like add your own asset manager, because people have different needs when it comes to asset management, right? And so we did that, and he built this awesome like media manager that fits perfectly for what they need, right? So yeah,
that's kind of why you open sourced that new plugin for all of your media management side of things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I made like a webcam asset source plugin on the train ride home. It's like
nice,
pretty easy. Yeah.
I definitely plan on still. So full disclosure, I'm a Cloudinary MDE as well. So I've had Cloudinary images floating around every place. I'm like, I'm not ready to convert all those to Sanity. Those need to stay there. So in kind of that portable text piece of it, I embed images, but just kind of the source links. The cool part about that new plugin, I think, is to be able to then link up my Cloudinary syncs and just kind of pick and choose what I need to do out of that one. Something else that I'm working on, if I ever get some more free time, it seems like I don't have enough these days, is to export directly out of Figma, either to Cloudinary or to Sanity.io, which you and I have discussed very briefly, but that's something I definitely want to work on in 2020 as well. We just do too much image creation that I have to move off manually all the time. So it'll be some fun stuff coming in 2020 for sure.
Absolutely, and you touched on something there, because we don't mind at all that you use Cloudinary, and that if it works for you, that's totally cool. And we just wanted to make it easy for you to continue using what you need to use, because you have, like in the enterprise area of stuff, you have like they have to be used as like digital asset manager, because it was like decided by lawyers and stuff. So it should be like easy to tap that into Sanity and continue like building. So that's cool. Yeah.
At my old company, they were heavy into Adobe, but you want to talk price comparison on that? It's night and day.
I think we're still cheaper than Adobe.
just a smidge, yeah. Okay, so that's all the kind of questions I had ramped up. We've switched over. We're trying to do some random picks, but what we're gonna go forward with now is we're calling them our Purrfect Picks. So I think I kind of mentioned this to you a little bit, Knut. Do you have a few or one or any picks?
At least one, or the obvious pick is of course go to Sanity.io/create and try it out. But that would be boring to say, right? So my Purrfect pick is take a vacation.
Nice. I like that. You know, coming out of the holiday season, people kind of forget that.
I just took a vacation, and it's pretty healthy and good. I just closed the Mac before the holidays, and it stayed closed. Yeah, that was needed.
I'm gonna pop up for those on the YouTube side. So Sanity.io create for those on the podcast I have up right now. The cool part is I actually started with this blog with Gatsby side of it, and I've customized it like crazy since then, but it's a great starting place. Recently, Nick and I have been talking about now that we're bringing more people on to do content, we actually might be switching back to like Next.js to get some more like real-time pieces to it, so we don't have to do builds all the time when we want to get our blogs out. So some great starter things. Oh, I didn't even see the Sapper one in there. Very nice. So that's for those of you Svelte 3's out, Sapper's kind of build off that.
Yeah, and there's an agency in UK called Moving Brands, and they actually made a Svelte portable text serializer. So if you want to use native Svelte modules in your rich text, you can now do that.
That's really cool. That's really awesome. Okay, so my Purrfect pick, and I did stick with the Sanity idea as well, but I love this squizzy thing, and the reason I love it is it's because it's blowing my mind right now. This gets back to my whole question, like, so if you haven't heard of it, there's this thing called Kahoot, right? It's kind of how to teach kids development and all kinds of things, I guess. But what they do are little quizzes. And Sanity, I don't know if you're a heavy part of this, or Evan, or who actually wrote this app. But the cool part about this is it shows you can use Sanity.io for not only content, but you actually have a game set up, a quiz game, or quiz, or however you say it, set up that you can interactively work with each other on. And that's where my mind gets all confused and blown again, because I'm like, well, I always use Firebase for this side of things. I think you guys are using Lambdas or something like that on the back end.
Yeah, so we like every week we have like we could build this with Sanity, right? When we see a new like software as a service thing pop up or something, we kind of had the idea of like making like a this could be your new startup using Sanity thing, but yeah, Squizzy is like this idea that we had to show kind of another side of Sanity, because as of now, most people use it like as their website backend, which is totally cool, but there's so much more that you can do. And making this real-time quiz game was a way to show that. Also showing how you can customize the studio, because we also have this, you have this host screen like that have the QR code that your mobile application can scan and shows like the results and stuff like that. And that's made like as a plugin for the studio.
That's very cool.
And the code is like on our GitHub, and you can check it out. And as I say, we use some lambdas on Netlify to let the client application post their answers. And it's not that much code. That's a cool with lambdas, because it always tends to not be that much code for doing pretty useful things.
Serverless for the win, right?
It's pretty neat. Awesome. So yeah, you should check that out. I'm glad that you picked that.
Yeah, it's been on the back of my mind to actually implement something similar on HMP. We're working on this tutorial right now for like a 10-year-old essentially. So it's HTML for a 10-year-old, JavaScript for a 10-year-old. And I'm like, oh, this would be perfect just to throw like a quick quiz together that, 4 kids want to be like, hey, I'm going to test you in JavaScript. And like, that's what they get to do. So it was perfect timing for me. I just diving back into the new year here. It's got my brain just churning.
We actually run a Squizzy in the Slack community. And
really?
It totally worked. So that was cool.
That's awesome. So last but not least, my quiet co-host today. This Sanity is not quite in Nick's wheelhouse, so he let me roll for a while.
Yeah.
Do you have your perfect pick today, Nick?
I don't. I've been trying to do a little research while I've been sitting here. So I don't have a perfect pick for today. I've just been enjoying the wealth of knowledge both you guys have. So I'm good on my side today.
Hey, fair enough. Did you get your birthday present? Nick's one of those lucky people that has a birthday on Christmas. So I sent him a present.
I did. I just got it today. I'm sure you found out about that. And I was going to talk about that offline. It's amazing, by the way. So thank you.
Very cool.
Perfect.
All right, we'll talk offline more. Well, awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up there. I really appreciate your time. It sounds like we might be able to steal some of your time again to come on and be a guest on Purrfect.dev. Thanks.
Sure, let me know.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you all. Nice to meet you.
Too.
Thanks again for watching Purrfect.dev. We also host a podcast on Purrfect.dev. This feeds out to iTunes, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast.fm, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, and Stitcher. We hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching Purrfect.dev.